Tonight we present
Pam Reynolds Near-Death Experience. Pam Reynolds' experience is one of the most compelling cases in the field of near-death experiences, NDEs, and one that challenges what we think we know about consciousness, life, and death. The case itself raises unsettling questions about the true nature of human awareness, particularly when it seems to exist independently of the brain. In 1991, Pam Reynolds, a 35-year-old woman, underwent a complex and high-risk brain surgery for a life-threatening condition known as an aneurysm. However, it wasn't the surgery itself that would make her case legendary. It was the extraordinary experience that occurred while her brain was allegedly shut down. Reynolds surgeons were performing what is called hypothermic cardiac arrest, a procedure that involves cooling the body to reduce the brain's metabolic demands, essentially halting all electrical activity in the brain for a short period. Under these conditions, the patient's brain should have been completely inactive, incapable of producing any form of conscious thought or sensory perception. But it was during this time, when there should have been no brain activity, that Reynolds reported vivid details of her surroundings, some of which were medically impossible for her to perceive. The phenomena of near-death experiences, NDEs, have been a subject of interest for centuries, but only in the past few decades has modern science begun to take a serious look at them. These experiences, often described as journeys through tunnels, encounters with bright lights, or visits to an afterlife, have puzzled researchers and laypeople alike. One of the central questions in NDE studies is whether these phenomena are products of brain activity, a result of oxygen deprivation, or evidence of consciousness existing outside of the physical brain. Numerous studies and anecdotal reports have suggested that NDEs are not just hallucinations caused by a dying brain. In fact, researchers such as Dr. Raymond Moody and Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross have argued that NDEs may be evidence of some form of existence beyond the physical body. However, the mainstream scientific community often dismisses these reports as the result of neurological or psychological reactions to the trauma of dying. In 1975, Dr. Raymond Moody's groundbreaking book Life After Life helped to bring attention to these phenomena, reporting cases of individuals who had experienced what they believed to be out-of-body experiences, with some even describing accurate details of events that occurred during their clinical death. These accounts laid the foundation for much of the modern interest in near-death experiences. Pam Reynolds' case, however, took the debate to a whole new level. Here was a woman who, under the most controlled and scientifically verifiable conditions, was supposedly experiencing an awareness that went beyond the expected limits of human perception. Pam Reynolds' story was meticulously documented by her medical team. In May of 1991, she underwent a procedure at the Barrow Neurological Institute in Phoenix, Arizona. The surgery required that her brain be completely inactive during the procedure. To achieve this, her body was cooled to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 16 degrees Celsius, and her heart was temporarily stopped. For all intents and purposes, Reynolds should have been completely unconscious, with no capacity for thought, sensation, or perception. It was during this period, however, that Reynolds had a remarkable out-of-body experience. She reported floating above her own body and witnessing the entire surgical procedure. She described the tools being used by the surgeons, the conversations they had, and even the specific details of the room, all of which she should not have been able to perceive. One of the most compelling parts of her experience was the fact that, while dead in terms of her brain function, Reynolds described a very specific detail about the environment that she should not have had access to: a small metallic object on a shelf in the operating room. She even described the sounds of the surgical instruments being used. Later, when she was asked about these details, the medical team confirmed that her descriptions were eerily accurate, even though they were not visible from her position on the operating table. She had no way of knowing these things unless she had experienced some form of consciousness independent of her body. Despite this, skeptics argued that these memories were the result of the brain's residual electrical activity. However, Reynolds' case stood out because she had been subjected to extreme medical conditions that should have rendered her mind inactive, yet she experienced vivid, accurate perceptions while being clinically dead. As the days following the surgery unfolded, Reynolds' experience continued to baffle those around her. Her ability to describe details of the room, the medical equipment, and the actions of the surgeons during her procedure left many investigators perplexed. She had not been exposed to any of these details prior to the surgery, and the account she provided was far too specific to be explained away as a mere coincidence or post-surgery reconstruction. In interviews, Reynolds explained that while floating above her body, she had an acute sense of awareness and a heightened perception of everything happening in the operating room. She described the surgical tools with precision, identifying them even though they were out of her visual range. Most strikingly, she reported hearing the surgeon's conversation, including one specific moment when one of the doctors joked about her body temperature. The medical team that attended her surgery, as well as a group of paranormal researchers who later investigated her case, were divided on how to interpret these findings. Was this evidence of the existence of consciousness beyond the brain? Or could it be a result of a neurological phenomenon that had not yet been understood by science? Some researchers suggested that these experiences were the result of neural firing that occurred during the process of brain death. Others, particularly those in the field of parapsychology, believed that Reynolds' experience was evidence of an afterlife or a consciousness that could transcend the physical body. As Pam Reynolds recovered from her surgery, the mystery surrounding her case only deepened. While many tried to rationalize her experiences, the facts remained. She had accurately described an environment she could not have known about while clinically dead. This created a paradox that no one, at the time, could fully explain. As she shared her story with the world, more questions arose than answers. How could her mind have remained aware during the most critical moments of brain inactivity? What did her case mean for our understanding of consciousness? And was it possible that the mind existed independently of the brain? These questions remained unanswered, and the medical and scientific community remained divided. The case had only just begun, and it left the world questioning what is possible beyond the limits of human perception. The story of Pam Reynolds' near-death experience continued to unfold in the years following her surgery. While she recovered physically, the impact of her experience lingered deeply in her mind. As her story gained attention, a growing group of researchers and investigators, from doctors to parapsychologists, took a keen interest in her case, eager to unravel the mystery that had so effectively challenged the understanding of human consciousness. Reynolds herself, though deeply affected by the experience, became an unexpected spokeswoman for the debate on near-death experiences. She continued to speak about the vividness of her out-of-body experience, the awareness she felt while clinically dead, and the profound changes it had brought to her life. Despite the uncertainty surrounding the scientific explanations for her experience, Pam Reynolds was resolute in her belief that what she had encountered was something far beyond the physical limits of the brain. Several years after the event, new discoveries were made that further intensified the mystery. A team of neurologists, working independently, conducted a study based on Reynolds' medical records and the detailed descriptions she had provided. They examined the procedures, the status of her brain during the surgery, and the exact timing of her supposed out-of-body experience. The results were perplexing. According to the neurological data, Reynolds' brain activity had been completely flat during the period she described her vivid, conscious experiences. The research team struggled to explain how her mind could remain so active while her brain showed no signs of electrical activity. This evidence only deepened the enigma. Had Pam Reynolds truly experienced some form of consciousness that transcended the physical state of her brain? Or was there another, more complicated explanation that had yet to be uncovered? Pam Reynolds' case soon became a cornerstone for the broader conversation about consciousness. Researchers around the world began to explore the idea that human awareness might not be entirely confined to the brain. Could it be that the mind or consciousness is something separate from the physical body? Was it possible that, during certain conditions, the mind could exist independently of the body? The implications of these questions were profound, reaching beyond the realms of science into philosophy and even spirituality. What does it mean for our understanding of life and death if consciousness can exist outside the physical body? Is there a life after death? Or is there a realm of existence where the mind exists beyond the biological constraints of the body? Pam Reynolds' case raised more questions than it answered, but it also prompted further investigations and discoveries into the nature of consciousness. Some researchers in the field of parapsychology suggested that her experience was proof of an afterlife, while others leaned toward the idea of a deeper, unrecognized aspect of human consciousness, a field that, at the time, remained largely unexplored by conventional science. But it wasn't just the scientific community that found her story intriguing. Pam Reynolds' experience resonated deeply with the public. Her story sparked an ongoing debate over whether death truly marked the end of consciousness, or if there was something beyond the physical world, something that could be accessed even when the brain had ceased functioning. In one of the most intriguing follow-up interviews, Pam described a new detail about her experience that had never been shared before. She recounted an encounter with what she called the voice. During her near-death experience, she claimed to have been greeted by a presence that was neither human nor physical. The voice, she said, told her that she was not meant to cross over yet, and that she had more to do in this life. It wasn't just a spiritual encounter, it was something that transcended the notion of human interaction. This chilling detail added another layer to her experience, suggesting that consciousness might operate on levels far beyond what we can comprehend. Just as the scientific community was beginning to wrap its head around the implications of Reynolds' experience, a twist occurred that brought a new dimension to the story. While Pam's personal narrative remained consistent, new revelations about the medical records surrounding her case began to surface. A former member of the surgical team, who had not been publicly involved in the case before, came forward with a startling claim. This individual, a nurse who had been present during Reynolds' surgery, provided a detailed account of a critical moment in the procedure that had not been shared with the public. According to the nurse, Reynolds' heart had not, in fact, stopped as the medical team had originally believed. Instead, the heart rate had fluctuated in ways that suggested a low level of cerebral activity. This new piece of information raised eyebrows. Could it be that Reynolds' experience could be explained by brain activity that had not been detected at the time? Perhaps the so-called clinical death was not as absolute as originally thought. Some researchers, particularly those skeptical of near-death experiences, seized upon this revelation, suggesting that Reynolds' mind had not truly been dead during the critical period. Despite this new claim, many in the scientific and parapsychological communities found it difficult to reconcile the new information with Reynolds' vivid and accurate memories of the surgical procedure. If her brain had been functioning at some level, why had she experienced such precise and vivid perceptions while under anesthesia? The question remained unresolved, further fueling the debate. As time passed, Pam Reynolds continued to live her life, a changed woman with a profound understanding of life and death. Although the mystery surrounding her near-death experience never reached a definitive conclusion, her story had an undeniable impact. It had sparked a global conversation about consciousness, death, and the possibilities that lay beyond the physical realm. The scientific community, while divided, had to acknowledge that there were still many unknowns when it came to human consciousness. Could consciousness truly exist beyond the body? Was Pam Reynolds' experience proof of a life after death, or was it simply a result of some unrecognized neurological phenomenon? The answers, for now, remained elusive, but the search for them continued. Pam Reynolds' experience may never be fully explained, but it changed the way we view consciousness, the brain, and the mysteries of life and death. It suggested that the boundaries of what we understand about the mind and its capabilities might be far more fluid and complex than we ever imagined. In closing, the case of Pam Reynolds represents more than just a peculiar medical anomaly. It challenges our perception of reality, of consciousness, and of the very nature of existence. Her story is a stark reminder that science, while a powerful tool for understanding the world, is still in its infancy when it comes to the mind's deepest mysteries. Perhaps Pam's experience is a window into something much greater, a part of the universe that we are only beginning to explore. As we continue to seek answers about life, death, and the nature of consciousness, one thing remains certain. The phenomenon that Pam Reynolds experienced was not easily dismissed. Whether it is proof of an afterlife, evidence of consciousness existing outside the brain, or something entirely different, it is a mystery that continues to captivate our imagination, sparking further inquiry into the unknown. And perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all, the fact that some questions, no matter how much we strive to answer them, may never fully be understood.
The questions don't end here, nor does our pursuit. If this story unveiled something you never expected to discover, then you're in the right place. Remember to subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this tale with others who, like you, are drawn to the unknown. Here, mystery always finds its voice, until we meet again, where the inexplicable will once again serve as our starting point.